Hello, Rethreading Lives Podcast listeners. You are in for a treat today. We have an amazing guest, MaryAnne Rodriguez, who is the founder, broker, CEO of Root Realty, an all-female small boutique real estate company in Avondale who specializes in historic homes, and they are using their business to do such good in the world. MaryAnne is like a force of nature. In her background, she's been Teach for America, she's been a real estate agent, and now leads this amazing real estate agency that is transforming the community through real estate agencies. So she has come on the podcast today, and she shares her journey about how she's using her business for good, how she's overcome some really significant challenges, being a mother and having her kids facing special needs, and just does a deep dive into what it means to be intentional with living out your purpose in this world. So stay tuned. It's a good one, y'all. Welcome to the Rethreading Lives Podcast. Today we have an amazing guest, MaryAnne Rodriguez. MaryAnne is the broker, owner, founder, CEO of Root Realty, an amazing boutique real estate company located in Avondale. And I would say your niche is historic homes. Yes. Is that right? Okay. She is an entrepreneur. She has started brands. She buys real estate. She buys warehouses. She's an amazing mom of 3. And we met, I don't even remember how we first got connected. Do you remember?
I don't.
I just remember when I did meet you, I was like, I need to know her. And then I remember having coffee with you.
Yes.
And I remember I was like looking at you from across the table, and I was like, she's such a fearless leader. And I was like, and my impression that I took away from that was like, you fearlessly love. You fearlessly move in life. And I love that.
Thank you.
I think that's, and then how I see your company operate and your family operate, like I see how that pours over into all aspects of your life. So I'm excited for people to get to know you and hear how you navigate life and how you navigate some of the, how you've learned to hold the hard things and the joy, like all at the same time, all in the same moment. So maybe you can start like giving us a little bio about where you're at now, about your company and your husband, your brand, all the stuff that you're starting.
Yeah, gosh. It's been a busy season of life in a lot of great ways, also a lot of hard ways. So how far back do you want me to go?
Let's go now. Like tell us about
like today.
Root Realty.
Okay.
Go to Root Realty. What you do now, your niche, and the other company you just started.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah. So back in 2016, I founded Root Realty, which is an all-women's real estate company in the heart of Jacksonville. And it was not intentional to be an all-women's company. It just kind of happened. And we're different in a way that we don't recruit. Like that's the real business behind real estate companies is recruitment.
I know they can be, it's like kind of ruthless. Like you're stealing other agents.
It can be. And I just don't love that. I don't love that model. I don't love that. And so we became a company that just naturally attracted good women. And I think people liked what we were doing and they wanted to be a part of it. But we also wanted to stay small because I feel like if we get to a certain point, I don't know everyone personally. I don't know their kids. I don't know their husbands. I don't know their stories. And so we have been really intentional about staying small. And I feel like that saying, quality over quantity has been so true for us. And it's been an amazing profession and just way of life for myself, for my family. On any given day, you will see kids and babies and dogs in our office. Somebody's always nursing, somebody's always pregnant.
Yes.
And it's just this beautiful culture that we have worked really hard to build but it didn't come like strategically. It was just this natural kind of evolution of a culture that supports and empowers women in all roles of their lives. And it's been just a really beautiful thing to witness. And I'm really, really proud of it.
And I bet, so I recently got asked, like, it's funny. I'm laughing because they're like, Kristin, you're a marketing genius. We would love for you to share your marketing strategy for Rethreaded. And I'm like, what? Like, really? I was just like, but it was kind of like it wasn't necessarily intentional.
Right.
It was just kind of following like who we are and who my gut said we are and having amazing people around me.
Yes. And what feels right.
Yeah. So that's kind of, like I wouldn't be able to tell you, here's the strategic roadmap.
I don't know that I could replicate this on paper.
I know. I can look back and I can be like, oh, I see now. I can point to some choices that I was like, okay, here at this moment, we started saying this instead of, I can look back.
Yes.
Back now and teach you what we did.
what we did well and what we did wrong.
Yeah. But not necessarily like, here, that's how you create this marketing. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Okay. So, my husband and I.
How many people though?
So we're at 16 agents.
Okay.
And a lot of our team has been with us from the very beginning, which is just so cool to me because there's lots of choices. And I feel like in a way we're a second home, a second family. We've been through some hard things with some of our teammates. Miscarriages, losses, hard times in the market, lots of different things. And I really feel like we pull together as a little family. So that's been a big part of my life. We do have 3 kids, so that part has been busy too. And my husband and I have this incredible dynamic of just working really well together as husband and wife, but also as entrepreneurs. And so, as you mentioned, we've invested in real estate. We've built a portfolio. We've renovated a lot of houses, both commercial, residential properties. And then most recently, we launched a brand together where we have created, designed, and manufactured these travel-inspired hats because we are a family that travels all over the world, and we love just visiting different cultures, learning, eating, doing all the things. And we wanted to incorporate a brand that kind of reflected the things that we love doing. And this kind of just happened. It's called Headed Everywhere, and it's just travel inspired hats. And we're only a couple weeks old, and it's like, okay, Jerry, he knows what to do on this side. He manufactures it. I design it. I market it. And my kids help create the hats. Like, it's just been this really hands-on cool thing that we've been able to do. We did the real estate together, and we're still doing that. But this has been something where I feel like we've been able to be even more creative and just do something more together.
How long have you been married?
We just celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary.
So why don't you just tell me the story about how you met?
It's like a movie. No, so I grew up in Indiana. I graduated college from DePaul University. In my last semester, I found out that I got selected for Teach for America and that my placement was Jacksonville, Florida. And I had never been to Jacksonville. I preferenced Florida because I wanted warm weather. But I had never been to Jax. I never even read about Jacksonville, knew nothing. Moved here. I was here about 2 months, and I moved into 11E downtown. And I was on the second floor, like facing a parking garage, not a good view. And my now husband was on the 15th floor, and he was on the elevator, and it stopped to pick me up on the second floor. And we talked, and then he asked me on a date, and we bought a house together like 6 months later, and I've never looked back. And I was only supposed to be here 2 years for my Teach for America placement. And after I met him and fell in love, I really feel like he is what caused me to fall in love with Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And I got really invested at that point. I thought this could be a great place to raise kids, great place to start businesses. And it truly has been that for us.
And 10 years marriage.
Yes.
But together since you were
a
little nugget.
Like 14, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So you're in your 30s, which is so much fun. 30s is so much fun.
It's been fun.
Oh, it's so much fun. Just wait to your 40s. It gets better, though.
Yeah?
It does. It gets better.
I just turned 35 last week, and I feel like now to say mid-30s, it's kind of like, ooh, it hits a little different, but in a good way.
Yeah. And I feel like in my 40s, a little bit of wisdom has started to sink in. That's what I like.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I've done this a couple times now in my life.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't know you did Teach for America.
Yeah.
So brilliant people go to Teach for America.
That's what I
mean, they recruit the brilliant. Like a couple of my friends have did it.
Yeah.
Why did you decide? What did you major in? And everyone, for those of you who don't know Teach for America, they recruit the brightest and the best students, and they send them into underserved schools and have them teach for 2 years or a year.
2 years.
2 years, in the hopes that if you don't stay in education, you will always choose to advocate for education and have your world transformed. So a couple of my friends did it. They have it here locally. It's a great organization. I love it. Love it because everyone is transformed.
It really, it was such an incredible experience. So I went to a liberal arts college, and I was never like somebody that was like, I know what I want to do with my life. I knew I wanted to do a lot of things, which
doesn't surprise me.
Turns out that was true. And so I majored in things that I enjoyed. So I majored in sociology and anthropology with a minor in psych. And I loved like studying relationships and people and cultures and finding out like why people do things certain ways. And I didn't really know how that would translate into a job, neither did my mom. But I knew that it was those were the classes I really wanted to go to. And so I always had a love for education though. And I was a coach all through high school and college. I loved working with kids. And so when I was between Peace Corps and Teach for America, to be honest.
Okay.
And the idea of the Peace Corps scared me a little bit because I really didn't want to be so far from my mom and my brothers. And so Teach for America, I was like, okay, at least I'll be in the U.S. and it's a 2-year commitment. You know, I don't know if I'll stay in education beyond that. Let's see how it goes. And so I was placed here, and I did stay on for a 3rd year. So I taught 4th and 5th.
Really?
I did, yes. And I loved it. It was definitely one of the more challenging times of my life. I had, so to back up, my student teaching, so you student teach the summer before in another city. And so I student taught in Chicago in a pretty rough part. And I'll never forget, I had a little boy, I taught 7th grade summer school, and he came to school in tears, very distraught. And we had a state test that week. And so I pulled him aside and I'm like, honey, what's going on? Like what, something happened at home. What's happening? And he had tripped on a dead body on his way to school. And this child is expected to perform on a test. And that was really what changed my perspective in the world of education. Was my students had much bigger things to worry about than how they did for a state test and on a state test. And so for me, the years I spent in a classroom were more about how do I reach my kids in a way that I'm really supporting them for the long term, not just teaching them 4th grade English, but how am I helping set themselves up for success as citizens, as human beings, as sons, daughters, as friends. And so that was really my MO when I was in the classroom. But I think that did translate into my kids wanting to learn because they felt like they were being seen and being heard and just being treated as human beings versus just, all right, let's knock the next kid out to the next grade. And some of them were so behind that it was like, no, I can't just pass them on because that's what I'm being told to do. It was, let's sit down and really see where the disconnect is here. And this was at 10 and 11 years old, and I had kids come to me that weren't reading yet. And
in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah. And I taught in Springfield. I bought my first house in Springfield, so I felt really connected to the community. And I was one of those teachers. I mean, I can say this now, but I mean, my kids were always at my house. They were piled into, I had a little 1988 Saab convertible. So, I mean, it really didn't even have a back seat, and it was falling apart. And I had like 7 kids in there at one point, just piled in. And my kids really got to know Jerry. They got to know my husband. We took several kids to the fair every year, which was really fun. And it was just a really transformative couple years of just seeing like what the reality was in the city that I was growing to love, and how much more help was needed beyond classroom walls.
So good. I feel like your purpose is already like showing itself.
Oh gosh.
So the rethreaded process. So
Yes.
The reason why I wanted to come is all of this, like why and how you choose, what threads in your life allowed you to choose, Teach for America. But so the idea is that we all go through hard things, mm-hmm. and those get threaded into us, and then we get beautiful things threaded into us. And what that does is it creates the sphere. We call it the sphere of potential. But really, what I've been defining potential as is the ability to hold all that life has with love. And your sphere is kind of like your space, your capacity to hold. So typically, when hard things happen, your sphere can collapse and go in. And usually you're left with the harder things. But then we talk about these 5 ingredients that you pour into, and your sphere expands, and you get to hold it all. Because what happens a lot when you go through hard things is sometimes the joy and the good stuff in it is pushed out. And we call that learning how to hold the paradox of life, which would be the pair of ducks. So we talk about the yay duck and the yuck duck holding it together. I did learn that in a children's sermon, and it did change my life.
I love it.
So I know that you have had ups and downs, and even after our past conversation, I always listen to how people hold things. How are they able to hold the hardest things in their life and still have hope, still have joy? And it doesn't necessarily make it any easier, right? Mm-hmm. But you can still navigate, and there's still space to hold. So I know that you have there is a significant person in your life. So I'd probably start with your mom.
Yeah.
So maybe we can start with your mom and go back a little bit to your childhood and talk about, your mom. I remember when we first met and we had that coffee, whatever years ago that was, you talked about your mom.
Yeah.
And I've always remembered that, and your relationship. So maybe we could go back.
Yeah.
Let's start with your mom, and I'm just making an assumption here that she is one of the main reasons how you turned out to be how you are.
100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So growing up, my mom was, and still today is everything. She was mom and dad. So my biological dad left when I was 4, and my mom I have an older brother and a younger brother, and she raised us 100% on her own, financially, really? Emotionally, in all the ways. And, now being a parent, I look back on so many things and so many decisions that she made. And at the time I couldn't understand why, or it felt unfair, or, it felt hard. And now I understand it. My mom is the strongest person I've ever met. And I think that her strength trickled down through all of us. She raised us on her own, and I would say did a really, really freaking good job. My brothers are incredible people. I'm proud of where I've, come in life, and in all the ways, not just business, right? And her challenges didn't stop after we left the house. She was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and I think that's when we kind of first met.
Yeah.
And
so where was she living at then?
She was in Jacksonville.
Oh, so, she was in Jacksonville.
Yeah,
okay.
She moved here to be close to me when I started having children, and she's been a huge part in helping raise our kids as well. And she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. I'll never forget the day I was leading a sales meeting at Root Realty, and I get a call, and she knew when our sales meetings were, so she wouldn't just call. So I stepped out to take the call, and she just told me where she was in the car in the parking lot of the hospital, and I just knew something was really wrong. And so she shared, she had stage 4 breast cancer, and it had metastasized. It had spread to her hip as well. And so she went through chemo and radiation. And at the time, we had purchased the house across the street, literally from her, to be right there to take care of her. And it was just this kind of weird, like, change of roles where, my mom had taken care of us in the most ultimate way, because she was mom and dad and provider. I mean, no kind of support in any way from anybody. And then the tables turned where she couldn't work. She couldn't hardly eat. She couldn't basically survive on her own without this incredible combination of poisonous, drugs that helped get rid of the cancer. And so our roles kind of switched, and I just experienced this whole thing of like what it really meant to have selfless, unconditional love. I mean, I always knew I loved my mom, but to become like the mom in that moment while I had, 2 young kids, it was just the most kind of awakening experience of what it means to really love someone in the most incredible way. And so she is now almost 6 years cancer-free, which is has been incredible to celebrate every year. And it definitely played a big part in our relationship where, so much of it was hard, but then now being on the other side of it, just being able to reflect back on just some of the beauty that was present as well.
So maybe you can go back to your childhood, and did your mom navigate cancer similarly to the way what was it about your mom? Do you have stories from like your childhood about how she navigated, like what did she threaten to you? What would she say to you? What did she model for you?
Yeah. I mean, hard work was not number one, but hard work was a big, just kind of a big part of her. And it wasn't by choice. And she told me this just recently, that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Like that was her goal, when she married my dad. And just knowing that now and looking back on how very much the opposite her life ended up, just doing whatever she needed to do to provide for us, and knowing what it costs to raise kids. And we were in the best school in our city on scholarship, but we were, education was really important. And my mom somehow never missed anything. And that's like mind blowing to me, having 3 kids now and owning a business. I'm like, I struggle to just get from like A to B and like make my kids dinner some days. And my mom didn't miss anything we were a part of. And that's mind blowing to me. I think too, just spiritually, she instilled a lot into us, that trusting in God, trusting and having faith, even when things weren't easy, is something that has really shaped, I think, who I am today, and hopefully how I raise our children. She didn't really let us see the hard. Like, we didn't know we were poor. We didn't really know we were missing anything, because I think we had so much love that our house felt really full of joy, really full of light. Our house was the house all of our friends came to, and looking back, I'm like, they had everything. Like, they had the pools, they had the snacks, they had, and I'm like, what did our house have? Because we had a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. And,
really?
Yeah.
And so you all shared a room?
So we all shared a room, and then my mom took one room and cut it in half and put a wall up. And so there was no closet, but it was like the size of a closet. And all that could fit was a twin bed that had 2 drawers underneath. And that became my room when I got old enough, because she was like, now that you're a teenager, you need your own space. So we made a 3rd bedroom, sort of. But 1 bathroom, so that was fun, trying to get ready for school. And but our house was just really full of joy. And I don't know how she did that, but she did. And I really feel like despite a lot of the hard, I had a really, really happy childhood. And there was always this idea in the back of my head that, you know, if I were to be the best, if I were to do the right thing, if I were to get all A's, blah, 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 that my dad would come back around. And I worked really, really hard for that to happen. And as a child, that's really confusing when he doesn't come back around. But my mom, never talked badly about him, never made it where like there could have been way more emotion and way more hardship. She was really, really positive for us. And I think that probably changed everything, because had we seen the grief and the hardship that she probably experienced on a regular basis, just knowing how hard it was, not seeing that, I think, just made us we didn't realize how hard it was.
You just saw your mom as she was your rock.
Yeah. Yep. She still is.
Does she ever talk about, would she ever say it was hard?
Now she does.
Oh, she'll tell you.
Yeah.
Now.
I found out things as an adult that I didn't know took place. And now I understand why the marriage didn't work. But again, she didn't put that on us as kids. We didn't know. And I think it's made me, I already respect my mom so much, but just to know that she wasn't willing to put up with certain things and let us see certain things. Really, she was doing it to protect and love us, even if she maybe wanted it to work and thought maybe that it could work. She really, really her main goal was to protect us. So yeah, she's amazing, and she has so much faith. And despite what she's gone through, she I think has instilled in me that there is always a bigger plan and there's always a bigger design. And going through the hard that some of the hard that I've gone through as an adult, I always try to go back to that.
Can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah. I think growing up without a dad, there was always that void of not feeling worthy, not feeling good enough. So kind of the pressure that I would put on myself would be a lot. And sometimes I would crack under that pressure, academically, athletically, all of those things. And
so you were a highly successful student.
Yes.
And an athlete.
Yes.
You were a runner.
Yes.
Okay.
And I was just, I was the student president. I was everything that I could possibly be. And part of me really thrived in it. I like being busy. I like doing all the things. But I don't know that the intent behind it was always healthy. And yeah, so I went to college. I graduated, met my husband. And I really feel like I met my soulmate, and we started having children. And there's parts of this that where I want to protect their privacy, but we do have 2 medically complex children. And when that news hits you and there's nothing you can do to change it, I don't know that there's any other way to get through it than to have faith that it is by design and that it is for a bigger purpose. And that's been a really trying lesson. And there's days that I believe it more than others, for sure. But I just have to know that God's plan is always better than mine. I expected to have a bunch of kids, have healthy kids, have, kids with no issues. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the plan when you decide you want to be a parent. And that's not always how the plan goes. So having to just adapt and do so in a way that you don't let the grief destroy you, I think is key.
How much are you willing to share today? Kind of in that journey? Just because I think I mean, one of the things that I learned from Katrina, because sometimes our guest will talk about things. Okay, so Katrina lost her daughter to an overdose. Mm-hmm. And like, I learned from her, she's like, I felt so ashamed as a mother and I lost my confidence. Hmm. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. And she said, that's the one thing that, I mean, it took her years to get that back to like heal and grow from it. But then like, there were so many other parents who had experienced that and no one was able to verbalize it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if how much you want to talk about that, but I just feel like learning how to hold, and this is probably maybe the theme, right? Learning how to hold the hard and the good with your children.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is like the ultimate holding, right? The ultimate creating space because they're your babies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your natural inclination is to protect and do everything.
Yeah, that's hard.
So how did you do you want to talk about how you, I don't know what details you want to share. Do you want to talk about how you found out and how you've been processing?
The grief of that is still a little bit too hard to verbalize. I think
and let's just give people context. You have one older child who is, I mean, all your kids are amazing. I mean, all your kids are amazing. I just happen to know your oldest the best because he helped me in the warehouse all the time.
Yes. So, and to be fair, I'll give some context. So Jerry and I, Gray was our surprise baby.
Surprise!
And I say he was our gift, right? I don't like when people say like accident or anything like that because he was very much here by design. And yeah, I mean,
so even that, kind of how Gray came into the world.
Yes.
Like, okay, there's a bigger plan because this wasn't the plan.
Right. Mm-hmm. So many plans, just a little detoured. Mm-hmm. And that's the funny part is like, we weren't, and we were never upset. Like we always knew we were going to have children together. So it just happened a little quicker than, we had planned. And so we're raising this, very healthy boy with, no kind of disability or anything like that. And then we had our second, when Gray was almost 5 years old. So they're all 4 years apart. Not by design, just happened that way. And, so our kids our two youngest have kind of some complex issues, but I would say their biggest one overall, they both have hearing loss. And so they both utilize hearing devices that are not typical. So it's not like your typical hearing aid. It's not your typical cochlear implant. It's very rare. We travel to South Carolina for their medical care. And we kind of found out just some things at the same time for both of them. So there were kind of some misdiagnoses. And so the grief was really overwhelming because it was two kids at once. And we really, I'll speak for myself, questioned my faith because I thought this is already really rare. And how did this happen? How did this happen twice? And we have one child, with nothing. And how and why? And I feel like had I stayed fixated on those two questions, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I don't know where I would be. And so it was definitely a choice of how to find the beauty. And both kids are thriving. All of our kids are thriving. Just our younger two have different roadmaps, and they'll have surgeries throughout their lives. It's going to be kind of an ongoing thing for their whole life. And they have they've taught me more about resilience than I could ever learn firsthand, I think. Our daughter's surgery, for example, they have to wait to do this surgery until their skulls are thick enough to drill through. And so at 5 years old, she has this surgery, and they give us all kind of pain medication and things to get through the hard part afterwards and the recovery. And I'm on a couple forums where adults have had this surgery, and, you know, they're like, the pain is, I mean, and they're just going on and on. And so, you know, I have all this fear of like, oh my God, she's going to be in so much pain. And I mean, within hours of her recovery, there's a special doll store in Charleston that we always go to when we visit for medical visits. And she was ready to, I mean, bandaged up, but she was ready to go shopping for her doll's clothes. And I just thought, I'm like, how is this child ready to do this? I mean, her skull was just drilled through. She has a magnet in her head. I mean, how? And so it's been a good wake up call for me when I've gone through this, you know, this falling apart at work or this happening, whatever. I'm like, if she can bounce back from that, I mean, what a lesson. She's, you know, now 6 years old. And so just witnessing their resilience, I'm a firm believer. I really believe that this is all for some kind of bigger purpose, even if I don't know what that purpose is in my lifetime. And that's a hard thing to just kind of grapple with, but I know.
Especially when it's your kids. Like, you can almost say it
Yes.
about your own pain.
Yes.
But it's hard to say that about your kids.
Yeah.
Knowing that it might be hard for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. There was this saying at church, and it really, really spoke to me. And, you know, whether you believe in God or some other higher being, right? And it was this man talking about his experience he was dying of cancer. And he had said in his dying moments, he, you know, kind of reflected back on his journey and said, you know, I'd rather have cancer and know Jesus, like KNOW Jesus, than not have cancer and not know Jesus. And I heard that and I was like, will I ever feel that way about what my kids are going through? Mm-hmm. Will I ever get there? And I don't know that I'm ever going to say every day I'm 100% there, but I feel like I'm getting closer to that. And I know that they do know Jesus, and that they have, you know, they were made in his image, and they have so much to offer the world. And we have big plans in our mind for our kids, all three of them. But we always say our second, Isla, who has a more severe hearing loss, we're like, you know, she's going to win American Idol one day. Like, she's going to do something that connects to her story. And it's going to be really, really freaking beautiful. And I hope I'm alive to witness it.
That's so cool.
But
so what I've noticed when I'm interviewing people who go through hard things, that at like key points on their journey, they can choose. It's a choice. Whether it's conscious or not conscious. Like, I can stay here in blame and shame, kind of bitterness, questions. And we all go there. But there's like, I call it the turn. Like, people turn and they choose to turn towards vision. Like, I feel like God, that's why it's one of the ingredients, right? We have to have a vision for whatever we're in.
yes.
And that you deeply believe in the purpose of your children.
Yes.
That they have something inside them that brings value to the world. They show love into the world in their particular way. And there is a turn that you do. I don't know, do you have anything practical about how you choose that turn to turn towards that direction? Is it like down to like, do you go on a walk and get those thoughts out? Like, what is it for you? Like, do you have words about how you turn?
I think it was experiencing the deepest moments of the grief where I thought, I can't live this way for them. I can't, this isn't the mom they deserve. This is not the wife Jerry deserves. This is not, you know, it's not fair to my customers, my agents, everybody in my life. It's not fair for me to lose my life, you know, in a way. And I do feel like it was a conscious decision of, you know, I have to accept where we are. But I have to believe there's going to be a lot of joy. And that has been so true. And just in the small, and we celebrate everything in our house. My husband did not grow up that way.
Good.
And I brought that to the Rodriguez household where, you know, I mean, I heard us whisper for the first time and I'm like, that's a party. I mean, just whatever those moments are, I feel like have to be celebrated because I feel like that builds everybody's tank. And then when we have a rough appointment or we have another surgery or whatever brings that, you know, that tank down, it won't bring it down all the way. And my mom always would say that growing up. She's like, you've got to fill your tank. You've got to fill your tank. And I never really understood
the thread of your mom.
Yes.
Right,
and I never really got it as a kid. I'm out with friends. I'm star athlete. Yeah, my tank is full. I didn't know how to intentionally fill it. And now it's those things where I'm like, okay, that thing brings me joy. That experience brings me joy. Doing this with my family brings me joy. And so, you know, I think, and, you know, social media is a highlight, right? And I think people are like, oh my God, she's always celebrating. She's always she's always hosting. She's always going on a trip. It's like, yeah, I am because there's enough hard and I'm going to take advantage of all of the moments of joy that I possibly can. And I feel like we're raising our kids to be celebrators.
But it's so true. I mean, it's resiliency, right? You're building this resiliency. And I was thinking about this the other day that I don't have my sphere with me today, but when it expands, when you're strong, it bounces. So yes, when you go to the hard doctor's appointment, maybe it decreases, but then it pushes out.
Yes.
And I think that what you're teaching us here is the ability to celebrate all the little things. So Lisa came on our podcast and she taught us about the kitchen. She ran our kitchen and she talked about how it's joy in the kitchen. And she goes and she told these stories about how she's developed a culture in her kitchen where everything is about winning. So every time, so the toffee is made, it's made on the stove and then you pour it into these molds, you freeze the molds, you pop it out, and then each piece goes through this chocolate enrober. And then you have to dip each one in the topping. And then you have to package it. So she just talks about how every day, every piece of chocolate, they celebrate it.
I love it.
And so at the end of the day, everybody on the team gets to see all the work they did and everyone feels like they won.
I love it.
Instead of the opposite, we're like, well, we just did the same thing every day today. We won all day long. And tomorrow we're going to come back and we're going to win. So that when the machine does shut down, when all the problems happen, there is a resiliency in her team.
Yes.
So it's like the same thing you're doing in your family.
And I feel like it's critical because, you know, while we have two kids that kind of have each other in a way. And that's where I do feel like God kind of winked at us and was like, you know what, at least they're going to have one another. But then to have, you know, a third child who doesn't have any kind of disability, you know, we have to make opportunities for him to feel special and celebrated and not, you know, get some attention,
right?
Because so much of attention it can be on them at times, and so everything's a celebration.
So how do you bring that into your work?
Well, everything's a celebration.
That's what I was like.
I'm like, oh, I sold a house. I did my job. We're gonna celebrate. We sold a hat. Yes, we're going out to dinner. And Cherry's like, the hat doesn't pay for the dinner. But no, I just feel like that way of life, and it's, you know, it's not a big celebration. It's sometimes it's just, you know, Jerry will come home and he had a big win at work and I'll have just a note for him or I'll have a glass of champagne for it. It's not these big ornate things all the time. But I feel like it's kind of a practice of gratitude too, right? Like we don't expect good things to happen, but when they do, we need to appreciate them. And I think, you pre having kids with special needs, I think I just didn't maybe understand the blessing of good health, and just, I just assumed I'd have good health, my kids would have good health. And then when you're presented with an alternative and there's nothing you can do to really change it, you definitely grow a deeper appreciation for it. And I think that kind of ultimately shows itself through the celebrations. We're just we're grateful to be alive. We're grateful to have the family we have. We're grateful to have the kids we have, despite any of the hard. And I mean, I tell Jerry all the time, I'm so blessed. I'm so lucky to be your wife, because I think back on the dad and the husband that wasn't in my life growing up. And so I think I just extra appreciate, and he's like, we don't have to celebrate that big, but we're going to.
No, it's cool. I mean, I just know a lot about trauma, and it's cool that you were able to navigate life and recognize goodness in a partner and be able to choose a really good partner and a good dad.
Yes.
I mean, feels like such a blessing and wisdom. So I've been in the rethreading process, in that picture, how we have blame and shame over here. And then on the other side, we have how to move out of blame and shame and expand your spheres to take responsibility. And we kind of define that as the ability to choose your response. As I'm listening to you, you're choosing you have capacity inside you to choose your response. And so far we've identified 3 things: imagination, courage, and it's not esteem. What is it? Empathy, that move you out of blame and shame. But I wonder if thankfulness needs to be in that, because it seems to be such a role.
It is
in giving, in increasing your capacity to hold things in life.
I think grief and trauma can open your eyes in a beautiful way to appreciate when the grief is less or when the trauma is less. And it I don't know, I feel like it allows you to see the light in really dark situations. When you can really sit back and think of we're going through this really hard thing, but then there's these 5 small little things that are really great, and it is, I feel like it is a very conscious choice. And I used, to be honest, to kind of make fun of people that did affirmations and gratitude, wrote down, and I'm the last few years that's played a huge role in my life.
So you write stuff. I
do.
What do you have some examples?
Yeah. So I start most mornings with a devotional, and after that, I either write down or I just sometimes just think about it if the kids are already awake. But usually 3 things that I'm grateful for, and they, can be as complex as something big that's happening, or just I'm thankful that my coffee is hot this morning. Whatever it is, I try to find 3 things in the moment that I'm grateful for. And affirmations too. There's still some that I'm I would never say that about myself. It makes me cringe a little bit. But then there's some that have really been impactful for me. And I think one of the bigger ones is just the worthiness piece, because I tried for so long to impress and do enough to feel like I'm worthy to be, for my dad to be in my life. I think I really feel like those small actions can really add up and really adjust your mentality. But again, I was not a believer in them for a very long time.
I know. And then we go through hard things and you're like, oh, maybe they were right. So we just had our Women Empowering Women, which is now it's become more of an educational networking event. And we had an hour class on purpose. We were talking about it. And and especially women, we struggle with. So how I've been teaching it and like trying to frame it in my own life is that like we are each born with a specific way that we bring love into the world. That's our purpose, right? I feel like my purpose is to activate and envision the potential inside people. I like bring energy, a spark. I don't bring structure or organization. I bring like a tidal wave of energy.
Yes, you do.
Into the room. Sometimes destructive, whatever. It goes both ways.
Never.
But it's how you love. And that we all have these roles in our life. Like, I'm not a mom, but I'm an aunt. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm a company owner. And I bring my purpose into all my roles. And my role is not my purpose. And I feel like my whole life I've kind of flip-flopped that. Like, I've always made my role my purpose, and that leads to all kinds of problems in my life. Comparison, jealousy, like I hold on to things closed-fisted. And it sounds like kind of what like the transformation that's happening in you is like you can stand in your purpose. And all these things, all these roles that used to define you are kind of things falling away, and you're landing into your purpose.
Definitely.
Do you have any insight into that and that process? Or do you have any words? I don't know if you've ever been able to say your purpose out loud.
I don't know that I could like eloquently put it in a sentence, but I think for a very long time, my identity was wrapped up in my production and my success, right?
Girl, I know, yes.
We've all been there. And I feel like, again, I may not ever know this answer, but I feel like God kind of shook things up for me, and it really helped me identify like what is actually the most important thing to me, and why I was designed and why I was put on this earth. And I feel like, I don't think there's one sentence that says like my purpose in life, but I do feel like I am an advocate, and I feel like that does bleed into every role that I'm a part of.
It does so much.
And that, I guess I've never thought of it.
Yeah.
That way.
And it's cool to kind of like see it unfold. If there is a bigger picture, whatever, and there's God and there's there's like vision and purpose, and like it's like you bring advocacy into your motherhood, which is what your children need right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
All your children.
All of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a woman-owned business.
Yeah.
And historic homes. Like, we could just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like there's this part of me, this like sick part of me that enjoys like the challenge and the problem at hand, and creating and finding a solution no matter what. And I tell people that in business too, right? Like, I've sold, $20,000 houses, and I've sold $1 million houses.
Where's that $20,000 house?
I mean, it's long gone, but that was an early career.
I need that.
But it was like, they're all going to have their own quirks and challenges in between, right? And I tell everyone, I'm like, there is literally a solution for any of these problems. It's, do we want to exercise that solution? And I think when you phrase it like that, there's definitely, and this is just the real estate example, but there's agents out there that are like, you should walk away from this. Like, this is a money pit, or this is, whatever. And it's like, ultimately it's my customer's choice, and I'm going to provide all the options. And I feel like once someone knows their options, they're educated, they're empowered, they're going to make their own decisions. And I think about that with my kids too. I'm like, if they know what they're capable of, and they know the options out there, like, they are unstoppable. I will really praise my husband for that, because he's the guy that everybody calls when there's a problem. And he will drop whatever he's doing to fix the problem. And
he sounds like Jason Jones, the COO of Rethreading. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like how he was designed. And having been next to him for this many years, I feel like it just has rubbed off on me where I'm like, oh my gosh, like he's always the fixer. He's always the firefighter that puts it out, you know, and I want to be more like that. And I feel like he's definitely, and not that I wasn't like a negative Nancy or anything like that, but I just feel like it's empowered me to be more of a solution oriented person. And then I applied it to business, and then now it's like a part of my family. And now it's, you know, it's a great quality. And I feel like maybe it wasn't something I was naturally born with, but it's something that just has kind of rubbed off on me.
Or it's always been there.
Or it's been there and he's pulled it out. Yeah.
And sorry, I put everything into the visual of Rethreaded process, but
please.
Here's blame and shame. Here's taking responsibility. So it sounds like when you face a problem, it's easy to like stay over here in the blame and shame. Mm-hmm. Like if someone's looking at a house, walk away. It's not fixable. There's no hope for it. Or you're going to take responsibility for the problem, for the house. And then one of the 3 ways to move out of blame and shame, one of them is imagination. And like the ability to like take responsibility of the problem and then imaginatively come up. You're right, there's always solutions and things you can do once you kind of really know what the problem is and take responsibility for it.
And it's a silly analogy, but you know, Jerry and I renovate a lot of houses, right? And we renovate a lot of houses that people have looked over and over. And they're like, we can't do anything with it. We can't, that's never going to be a beautiful house. And we go in and Jerry comes with like the engineer, like logistical background. And he's like, well, if we move this wall or if we take this out, if we add this, you know, and I'm over here like, oh my gosh, this tile would really bring out like the natural light or, you know, whatever it is. And then we like put it together. And sometimes I think about, I'm like, that's how we made our children, right? They're like, they need some help, you know, all of them. They need some help and there's so much potential. And then they have a mom and dad who can pour into them in different ways. Yeah. And then there's like this beautiful end product, right? That's the goal. But it has been really rewarding to just see kind of how our different strengths have helped create this beauty.
Which is we were talking through purpose at this Women Empowering Women thing, and we were talking about how when you're solid in your purpose and you're confident in it, you're not comparing, you're not wishing you had a different purpose or you were someone else. So you're kind of out of blame and shame. You take responsibility of your purpose. What it does is it expands you and you have space to hold someone else with you. And they have space to live out their purpose. And that makes a great team because you're both able to operate in the way that you're created to operate. Whereas my dark side is like jealousy. And then I'm like, no, there's no space for you. I need to be the star because I'm insecure. But no, when you are aligned with it, great things happen.
Yeah. And I mean, that's not every day, right?
No. But there is capacity to hold each other. And when it gets hard, to bounce, right?
Yes. Yeah.
To hold the good and hold the bad. I mean, I love how another thing that I'm learning is like the power of intentionality. And like when we were talking last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever, over coffee, and you were just like, well, you kind of said it now. I know it's important to me. Basically, I know what I'm good at. And I can be intentional with how I spend my time. And I want to be a good wife to my husband. I want to be the best mom. I want to be the best boss and take care of, you know, realtors? Yeah. You're the broker, realtors. And like I think at some point in our life to reach our potential and be a leader there is an extreme amount of intentionality that happens in your life. Which also allows you to say no.
Oh my gosh. And that's exactly what sparked it in me is I used to say yes to every, and I really would look at everything as an opportunity. Right. And I'm like, oh, but I don't want to miss that. I don't want to lose out. And in every area. And then it really wasn't, I feel like maybe some of it was just maturity. Some of it was, some growing up to do. And then other parts of it, I feel like were shaped by, my experiences with my children of like, where do I really want to spend my time and with who? And I mean, you will very rarely find me on a weeknight not at home. I rarely show houses to anyone. Rarely show houses on the weekend. And I'm really intentional of who I help at this point, because I want to make sure I'm serving people best. And when I'm overcommitted, I'm not serving everybody at the best capacity, and including my family. And so I've learned I would say last year was when I felt like I learned the power of no. And instead of looking at it as I'm missing out or I'm missing an opportunity, I feel like I'm gaining something even better, which is time that I won't get back.
This is it. That's it.
Yeah.
We talk about time is your resource. And it's the only resource you'll never get back. You can get back money, you can get back stuff, but time is the only thing you will never, ever, ever get back. And good leaders know this. And people who are living their life intentionally know this. That's it.
And so a few years back, I made this commitment to myself and my kids that I would pick them up every day from school. And my mom helps a lot. My husband helps a lot, but I really wanted that time. And when I first made the commitment, I was there. I was physically picking them up, but I was on the phone. I was responding to emails in the car line. I was still not really there. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward to the last 2 years, I'm like, no one is more important in this moment than these kids that I'm picking up that are so excited to tell me about their day. And so my phone connects to my car. And so I'll see the calls coming in on the screen. And I'm like, I don't care if it's the president of the United States. They are not as important as this story that I've heard 6 times already that Isla really wants to tell me again. And that's been a big shift, because I used to be like, that's a lead. That's an opportunity. That's I need to answer that. And now it's no, I need this. And I'm never going to get this moment again, because tomorrow it's going to be a different story about a different kid, and
the lead will be there.
And if it's not, it wasn't meant to be. And I would say this to new business owners too, is a lot of people are when you start a business, take every opportunity you get, work your way up. And it's I would say be intentional from the very beginning. Do not just work with any or everybody. And I did that. And I learned the hard way. I was verbally abused by people. I was treated poorly. I was, taken advantage of. There were lots of things that I wish I didn't learn. And if I could say, if I could go back, I would say, no, work with people that value you, and there's that reciprocal respect. Because now I feel like my customers understand. They're like, oh yeah, of course you have a family. Of course you're eating dinner. You're not going to answer my call. And I'm not a neurosurgeon. No one is dying. Yes, there's timelines we have to meet, and I will always meet them, but I'm not going to be attached to my phone for every beck and call, and everything is not an emergency. But that took a long time to get there.
And you had to be really intentional. So it was kind of deciding what's important, and then the phone is a huge thing, right?
It's a big thing.
So it's almost just a practical, something practical is you're separating yourself from your phone when you're with your children.
Yes.
Separating yourself from your phone when you're at dinner.
Mm-hmm. It has to go in another room. Mm-hmm. I have an Apple Watch. I think I've worn it maybe a total of 3 minutes in my life, because I'm I cannot be physically attached to something. I'm already, this is already next to me all the time. But to have it on me, actually gave me severe anxiety. And each buzz, I'm it's just one more person that needs me.
Yeah.
And I think it's easier to sometimes practice what you preach. But I tell my agents this too. I'm we cannot work 24/7. There's going to be people in California that want to reach us, at this time when we're doing this or whatever. And if you're available, do it. But if you're not, don't lose sleep over it, because there's always going to be more business. There's always going to be, and I feel like people respect that. I really do. I feel like, and if somebody doesn't, not somebody I want to work with anyways.
That's true.
But the phone is, it's such a big piece of our business. And that's why when we do travel, we intentionally travel in different time zones so that we can't be as available.
Smart.
And
that's another practical thing.
It's a game changer.
When we travel, we go to different time zones, so we're not as available. Very practical. I love it. So I don't want to get the time away before, because I want you to talk about a little bit about your business philosophy. Because one of the things I love is how you use your business for good. So like the way that you market. Let's just start there. I just feel like your whole business encompasses your deeper purpose of advocacy. And the way that you market is like through service and through doing stuff for the community. So can you just kind of dive into that? In addition to having 3 kids and being married and renovating houses and starting a brand, you also use your business to serve the community as your marketing tool, and I love it.
Yeah, and I will say you are the inspiration behind that.
Oh, that's so funny.
I went to, I don't remember what event, but I went to an event of Rethreaded back when you were over on Barnett, and I heard that phrase for the first time, like use your business for good, which it's not like a mind blowing concept, but it's when I heard it, it still gives me goosebumps, and I was like, wait a minute. Of course you need to be using your business for good. Like why else would you be in business? And I remember leaving that event and being like, what can we do? Like what can we do that's like, again, because we're such an organic company, right? Like we don't recruit agents, because to me that's inauthentic, right? Because I just feel like you're using people. I'll just put it out there. And so I'm like, I don't want to just like do something good just to say we're doing something good. I want it to be meaningful, and I want it to be something that makes sense. And so the first, to be honest, the first kind of population that came to mind was the homeless population, because that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we have this privilege of helping people that are also privileged to be able to buy a house, and not everybody in our community has that privilege, whether it's temporarily or forever. They may not. And like, what can we do about it? And then I was like, well, we have to tie in Rethreaded, because that's where I heard this
I didn't
phrase.
know this story.
Yeah. And so then I went back to the office like that next week, and I was brainstorming with our office manager at the time, and I'm like, what could we do that we would be good at, that would actually like either raise awareness or raise money or like do something good for these organizations? And kind of flash back to my running days, and I ran competitively. I was a coach, and I was like, we were talking, we're like, what about a 5K? And we met with Stuart, the GM for First Place Sports, and he was like, girls, I hate to break it to you, but you're going to lose money your first year. Like, races have to build credibility. They have to build purpose. Like, you're not like, we shouldn't do this. And we're like, no, we're going to do it. And we're going to do it big. And yeah, in our first year, we were able to donate $5,000 to each organization. Awesome. And we were like, holy crap, this is awesome. But I felt like it jolted our agents in a way that they were like, we're in a business that is beyond just us, and like we're impacting other people's lives. And we built furniture at the Schulzbacher Village when they first opened for all the women and children's housing, and that was great team bonding, because you're like cursing each other out with all these like IKEA drills and like little tools that don't make sense. And we've done like the seats at Rethreaded, and we've done some other things, just kind of like school drives and things like that. But what I think where we are now is like, before it was just kind of like what do we feel like makes sense? And now it's, what are the needs of these communities and how can we fill in the gaps? And it's as simple as Schulzbacher was like, we want our parents to be able to wrap their kids' presents. Can you help us with wrapping paper? And we're like, yes, we can help with wrapping paper. Like something that we see as so simple that we would just go and purchase no problem. Like that's what their need is, right? And I feel like it's, yeah, I could go on and on, but I will say this one story that was really cool. So it was our second year doing the run home, and it was actually one of the winners, and he had the name Karen written across his race bib, and I got curious, and I was like, "Can I ask you about your bib?" And he burst into tears, and he shared with me that his mother, her name was Karen, and she was homeless, and this was like 20 years prior, but she passed away on the street. And he was like, I feel like had this race happened 20 years ago and there was more awareness of this problem, and there was more resources for places like Schulzbacher and Rethreaded, like my mom would still be alive. And
whoa. And
I was like, whoa, this is not just like this fun 5K and we're just like writing a check. This is like really actually meaningful. And just to hear it so personal, just really, really hit me. And I was like, all right, next year we got to go bigger. We got to go harder. We got to raise more. And our team is super invested in making it a success. And I feel like it gives them just this sense of contribution and selflessness and generosity that I feel like is really rare in the real estate world. Like real estate is very like every man out for themselves. It's many people are in it just to make money. Like that's the reality of it. And I always felt like it could be something more. And I feel like our, partnership and collaboration with these two organizations has given us so much more purpose, and people admire it, and not in the sense that they're just like, oh, they're doing something good. It's like, I had a listing appointment with a woman, and she's showing me around her house, and she shows me her garage, and she has this like amazing workout situation, and I see a run home medal hanging on her stack of medals, and I was like, oh my gosh, you did the run home. And she's like, yeah, that's the whole reason I wanted to work with you guys.
Awesome.
She's like, I don't want just somebody selling my house. She's like, I want to know that the person with my largest investment in their hands is a good human being. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. Like that wasn't, that wasn't the intent behind it, but I loved that was her perspective.
I love it. If you all are listening, listen to that. I try to explain that into words. That story is so good because I try to put into words. Like I'm talking about people to give Rethreaded gifts, right? Just use our gifts.
Yes.
Like you were already going to give gifts, just use them. And I promise you, people will respond. Oh, yeah. Because it feels good to get the gift. It feels good to get the gift. And like, it feels good to use your business for good. And like 100%. Everything practical for you, like what I'm hearing practical is like having your team rally behind the purpose of a 5K for a bigger purpose. So there's a vision.
Yep.
That something's bigger than us. And then there's a deep purpose to your business.
Yes.
Like deeper than selling houses. And then there's the effect it has on the community, and it drives business back to you. It's not why you do it.
Right.
But it is, so in my mind, I'm comparing like a company, there's no judgment, but a company maybe who spends tons of money on advertising versus you can spend the same amount of money on a 5K that raises, $10,000 for nonprofits and have maybe similar outcomes.
Yeah.
However, there is this ripple. There's ripples in both ways.
Exactly.
There is a ripple into your company, that isn't money. It's what is valued by money because you get customers, but there's a deeper effect on your people, your customers. Probably attracts more of who you want to work with.
Yeah. It definitely does.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've attracted good people.
Yeah.
And that makes my job easier.
So much easier. Yes, so that's another plus. That's another plus.
Yes. It is definitely that ripple effect. And it's community building. And I feel like, you're helping build community when someone's moving into a neighborhood, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's they're invested. They're gonna go to those businesses. They're gonna support financially. They're gonna show up. But I feel like when people, they know they're a part of something bigger, everybody wants that.
Everybody wants that.
And your gifts especially, everybody has questions about them, right? Like the coolest thing I think is when we explain the leather jewelry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this is where it came. And they're like, what? I'm like, your ass probably sat on this. Like, and I was hanging from yours. But like knowing that every day they wear those, there's purpose behind that is, I feel like people want to be a part of something greater than themselves.
They do.
They don't always know where to start.
Right. They don't know where to start. Like, that's what I would wish. Maybe we need to have like a symposium again on how to use your business for good and like reinvigorate the business community. Here is practical ways to do it, and here's the results that happen.
Yes.
And it has to be genuine because people smell BS from a long way. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then what about, because you also do movies in the park or something?
Yeah. So, our goal really is to like create opportunities for families, for not just families, but for people in the community that are free. And so, we do a movie series in Memorial Park, and it varies year to year. Sometimes we do them most of the time we do them in October when the weather's better. But it's just an opportunity for us to gather. And what was really cool was we did a series of them during COVID. And when I tell you this community showed up, like everybody was like 6 feet apart in the park, but it was thousands of people. And it was people that just wanted to get out. They just wanted to see other people and be safe and do something as a community, during this pandemic. And I was like, gosh, I didn't realize how important this was for people. And so, we do the movies in the park. We've done different like workshops, just real estate and non-real estate. We just produced our first magazine. I don't think you're in it.
I didn't know you did a magazine.
So we started this magazine, and it's so cool because it's not like what you would think a real estate company would produce. You would think it would be like all about houses, right? And it really is like featuring this small business and this business owner and this person that transformed their houses in the neighborhood, or like all of these people that are doing really cool things and just giving them a feature. And so we started our first edition. We had 1,000 copies, and we're like, we don't know how this is going to go. They were gone. They were gone in 2 weeks, and we put them in coffee shops. But these were magazines that people like took home, and I don't know what they did with them, but they took them home. And
what was it called?
It's called The Root Magazine.
You even have a cool. It's even like the Root Realty is such a cool name. The Root Mags. Yeah, that's
it's
so good.
Like,
that's so good.
It's so cool.
This is what I love about you, Mary. And you're like, we did a magazine.
Has nothing to do with selling homes, but we've actually gotten business from it. Mm-hmm. So, we were strategic about how to, connect with us via the magazine, and it's a little QR code. And we've had people come in through the QR code that are like, I want to know more about you. I want to know more about your company. I want to know more about your agents. And each agent is kind of featured, sprinkled throughout, so they get to know like our team. And and again, that was one of those things that was like, there was no real plan. It was just like, hey, how can we reach our community in a different way? And
that adds value. That's interesting. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's like a beautiful magazine.
I bet it's beautiful. I mean, everything you do that you put out is beautiful. Yeah.
Well, thank you. It very much a team effort. We have some amazing agents that contributed, and some of our agents' husbands contributed. I mean, it's so just cool. a whole thing.
The family.
The whole fam.
So we have every guest kind of share. Well, before I get to that, if you're listening to this, go check out Root Realty. If you need to buy a home, go to Root Realty.
Thanks.
What's the name of the hat company again?
Which one?
The hat company that you're starting, the brand.
Headed Everywhere.
Headedeverywhere.com.
Yes.
Okay, headedeverywhere.com. So we ask every guest to share a full circle moment. So like, kind of like when all these threads of these hard things are kind of at this point where they actually expand your sphere instead of shrink it. Do you have any full first circle moments that you'd like to share with us?
That's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think about this for a minute. It's kind of deep. I don't know.
It's great. I love deep.
There was a moment in my deepest grief with my children that I didn't know if I would ever come out of it, and I wondered what the world would be if I wasn't there. And what I envisioned was like a really dark world without me. And I feel like in that moment, I was able to see how much light I bring, even in my own dark, in the dark of others around me. And I feel like it was a reminder that I have a lot to give, and I need to be here for all of it. And I just remember thinking, like, I have to make the choice to be okay and to like shine my light again. And even, you know, they say like grief comes in waves, right? And now I feel like the waves are less intense. They're more manageable. They're a little lighter, and I don't know. I'm starting to look forward to the day that I get to heaven and I can ask Jesus these really hard questions, because I've accepted that I'm probably not going to have answers in this earthly world, but that I trust that there are answers. Yeah.
Connected to a whole bigger picture. An advocate of light in a dark world. There you go.
Yeah.
Purpose. I love it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing and for being who you're created to be out in the world.
Thank you.
For doing beautiful things through your business, through your marriage, through your kids.
Thank you.
And just, I speak blessings of waves of goodness.
Thank you.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what your kids do.
Me too. They're gonna shake things up.
And the transformation that they have on you and the world.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening. Don't forget Rethreaded.com. Go and shop with us, buy your corporate gifts from us, and continue to listen to our podcast and continue to pour into those ingredients and become who you're created to be. We need you. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.